1000 Days of Mokhtar is about being old and feeling the end near, not being happy with your routine, but accepting you are too old for any change, because change is too much work, so you prefer to go on in the same unpleasant way, and then the change comes as a result of circumstances out of your control, and from the outside it might seem tragic, but when you are old, you see the world differently, and what was tragic before becomes welcomed. Here to Learn is one of the longer stories. It is about a young Moroccan girl, pretty and ambitious, and smart enough to know how to take advantage of her looks before they disappear. Malika's grandmother was fond of saying that when she had been Malika's age, she had looked exactly like her, and that if it were possible for her to become a little girl again and stand beside Malika, no one would be able to tell them apart. At first, Malika found this impossible to believe. She studied the old woman's ravaged face and straight away rejected the idea. After her grandmother had died, she began to understand what the old woman had meant when she said, "Only Allah remains the same." One day she would no longer be pretty, but now she was. So Malika starts her learning adventures, traveling and experiencing. A lot of it seems incidental, but she is aware enough to take advantage of it. She is hungry for knowledge and always insisting on learning, and the other material benefits are the result of it. But the psychological reasons were to show and prove to her family she was not like the others. And there is momentary instinct to give up when she realizes there is nobody to prove anything to anymore. But then she comes to the conclusion she might as well continue what she started. Alal is about a child abandoned by his teenage mother and being looked down on by the locals for being the son of sin. Because of it, he becomes detached from people and harbors animosity toward them. He starts to identify with an animal, a poisonous snake, and wants his revenge against humanity for the treatment he received. The common element with a few other stories is the fluidity between the human and animal spirit, also the feeling of being different and seeing animals as a physical escape to accompany the psychological detachment. Another story that relates to the idea and desire to become an animal is Kitty, about a little girl called Kitty by her parents, and because of it she begins to think she is a cat. She wishes so strongly to become a cat that slowly she starts to see herself as a cat, physically transforming into one. The implication might also be that the little girl was murdered and came back as a little cat to be with her grieving parents. Perhaps Bowles believed in a strong connection between humans and animals, the bodies being interchangeable for the soul. Maybe he believed his wife, after dying, became one of the exotic birds he kept. The story was adapted into a short film in 2016, which you can find on YouTube. Little House is about a rather common use of poison in the place Bowles inhabited for most of his life, Tangier. The poison not only as a tool of revenge, but also as a device to get what one wants. In this case, a bigger house. Tangier is part of Morocco, and the local population reflects the country, maybe even to a certain extent the Islamic world. I wonder how much, besides the religion, another prevailing presence in many of the stories is a strong tendency for superstition and belief in the supernatural. And this is further relayed in the next story, Empty Amulet, about a sickly woman who one day receives a gift from her husband, what she believes is a sacred object, and miraculously becomes healthy until she discovers the truth. The hours afternoon focuses on the life of expats in Tangier, growing divide between young daughter and aging mother. The aching nostalgia for her own youth remained, the bright and delusion days when each hour was filled to bursting with the promise of magic, when her life lay ahead of her, inexhaustible, as yet untouched. Also, there are other visitors who feel that being far away from home equates to relaxing the rules of the moral behavior they have been taught. But unfortunately for them, there are local rules of behavior that still apply. Tangier 1975 is another expat story. It is about the animosity and bickering between the Westerners living in Tangier, probably very similar to life in any colonized land, the paranoia resulting from being far away from home in an unfamiliar environment, often surrounded by hostile locals just waiting for an opportunity, and with time everybody starts to look like an enemy. The expats, at that time the term colonizers was more appropriate, were usually ambitious people competing for resources and envious of others' good luck. Also, they believed and felt being superior to the local population. Too Far From Home is about needing to go far away to learn about oneself and to realize not all the people are like us or the people we know. And the superficialities in our lives don't equate to better behavior. More of one doesn't mean more of the other. Actually, they are often proportionally inverse. What are my thoughts about the stories of Paul Bowles? The stories are very vague, subjective, and many difficult to understand. I would say they are very Kafkaesque. Some of them come to an abrupt end, seem a part of a novel, and perhaps would be better if explored in more detail and continued. To be fair, the stories become progressively better, so maybe it was me needing time to get a better understanding of Bowles' style, or probably because the stories are in chronological order, they really do become better with the author's experience. The stories, many of them, reflect local customs and traditions, the way of going about friendship, love, revenge, etc. Most of it focuses on North Africa, Morocco, the impact physical environment and religion have on who you are and how you behave. In the stories from North Africa, the people often seem to be angry or frustrated, even hateful, probably product of their environment, and the hostility of it transforms into individual and collective brutality. To be fair, I think Bowles' opinions will be similar regardless of where he lived, because he always felt like a stranger. There is also some local mythology and supernatural beliefs, and its impact is reflected in the daily lives of the people. Also, the conflict between the Western and local mentality and traditions, the codependent relationships of love and hate, one needing the other and trying to make the best out of it. Some stories also seem to mix Bowles' childhood memories, relationship with his family, and his later adult experiences while living in Tangier. They are reflections on oneself, who am I, but the characters and settings are fictitious, maybe because when we disconnect from reality, we are able to better understand ourselves. The common link to all the stories seems to be solitude, being a lone individual, and society just a sideshow. There is a general mood of sadness in the idea that you can only count on yourself and how people feel about you is only relative to their own needs. Basically, we all are alone in the universe, having temporary experiences with others. Also, there is prevalent use of drugs, hashish, between the Muslims, but the Western expats over time become fiends as well. The author was a big fan of it and smoked it regularly. There is always a pipe of kiff, hashish, accessible, close by, ready to be enjoyed, but it has an effect on one's behavior. He looked at the face in the sun's light and discovered a peculiar intensity there. He knew the expression. It comes from hashish. Carried along on his hot fumes, a man can escape very far from the world of meaning. Smoking of hashish reminded me of stories of the Far East, where consumption of opium was popular. When general life is mostly made up of misery and suffering, the masses need something to look forward to and calm themselves down. Founders of religions knew this. In Islam, alcohol is prohibited, but cannabis is allowed. And in Christianity, also Judaism, alcohol is the magical substance of choice. I think at the beginning, Muslims were allowed to drink, since in general it was a common practice to get drunk before the battle. But as Islam started its violent expansion, their leaders realized that being sober gave their soldiers a certain advantage on the battlefield. To sum it up, the stories of Paul Bowles is a good read, especially if you enjoy short stories. This being said, I think he was a better novelist than short story writer. This is just a personal opinion, and there are people who will disagree. Maybe I need to read more of them. Becoming a fan is often a progressive process. There were writers I did enjoy reading when I was younger, but with exposure and maturity I started to understand their writing, and more importantly started to enjoy it. Maybe I need to read more of them. Becoming a fan is often a progressive process. There were writers I did enjoy reading when I was younger, but with exposure and maturity I started to understand their writing, and more importantly started to enjoy it. Some proclaim Bowles to be the best American short fiction writer, but I don't know. My knowledge of the American short fiction is limited. The ones I prefer are Hemingway, and probably the top for me is Charles Bukowski, even Paul Theroux, who has similar style but with more realism. I think in general Americans are decent novelists, but I prefer Europeans for short stories. Some of the Bowles' stories were pretty good, but others too surreal for me and just went over my head. Anyway, Paul Bowles was an interesting personality, and in general I enjoy his writings. I will reread the stories again, sometimes in the future. I might spend more time here in Tangier, and Bowles seems like a good companion for this adventure. Okay, let's talk about the physical book. The book I am holding is a paperback which I transformed into hardcover, leather-bound edition. To make the cover, I use grade A, naturally tan hide, I buy from a tannery in North Spain. It is the same leather Louis Vuitton uses to make his bags, so it is top quality. I do all the processing of the leather myself. First I designed the cover, and for this I used a painting of the Sahara, huge sand dunes like ocean waves during a storm, and a caravan like a ship trying to find its way in a sea of sand. This is the bag with the blurb, and inside front cover I printed a quote from the book. If you want to see a more detailed video where I explain how I transform paperback into leather-bound hardcover, click on the link in the description. I will make a maximum of 100 editions of each title. Each one will be numbered and initialed, and the numbers will go in chronological order from 2 up, since number 1 stays with me. The price will be around $100, so if you would like me to make one for you, you can click below on my email and send me a message. I do not guarantee I will do it, since it will depend on the time I have available, access to leather, and if I can get my hands on the copy of the book. Now, if you're not willing to spend the $100, but you still want the book, what you can do is click below on the PayPal link and donate $3 or more to my channel, and for every 100 donations I will make a lottery and draw one name, and the winner will receive the book. So if you are cheap but feel lucky, this might be the way to do it. Also, your donations give me the extra motivation to make the book reviews, and I appreciate them very much, so thank you in advance. One more thing, when you made your donation, remember to include the title of the book you would like to win. The book itself is beautiful. Visually it has a very nice texture, it smells great, and the more you handle it, the more beautiful it will become. And it makes a great gift for yourself or somebody who appreciates books. So if you want one, don't snooze or you might lose. Well, that's it, so let's end it here, and until next time, keep your ear close to the ground and read a book. Adios.